Ukrainian forces coordinated drones and air assets to halt a Russian supply convoy near Donetsk, triggering a high-impact battlefield operation.
January 9, 6:30 a.m., 15,000 feet over the Donetsk region. A Ukrainian MiG-29 pilot, call sign Ghost, watches his radar warning receiver flare red as a Russian Pantsir S-2 searches, locks, and begins to track his cockpit. Under his wings sit 4 hammer bombs, and the aircraft feels less like a fighter than a delivery platform built for one precise release. Those bombs are not standard loadout, and this is not a standard strike. Their guidance package carries advanced navigation logic reverse-engineered from Russian missile technology Ukraine previously recovered. The kind of stolen insight that turns a familiar weapon into a different problem for air defense crews. If Ghost releases even seconds early, the entire trap collapses, and a $500 million operation becomes a wasted flight over the most watched sky in the theater. Down below, Russian planners are moving what Ukraine believes is a high-value convoy, roughly $300 million in vehicles, fuel, and critical equipment, through a corridor that looks safe on paper. The route is tight, fast, and protected, designed to compress movement into a single bottleneck where escorts can concentrate fire and surveillance can be layered. It is also exactly the kind of geometry Ukrainian intelligence teams wait for, because bottlenecks are where timing turns into leverage. Ghost holds altitude and pace, letting the lock stay on him longer than instinct would allow, because the lock is part of the design. The MiG-29 is acting like a magnet, pulling attention upward while Ukrainian teams shape the ground picture underneath. In the cockpit, the problem is brutal and simple. Survive long enough to reach the release window without forcing a defensive break that ruins the sequence. On the ground, the first visible move is not a missile or an explosion. It is a swarm. A dozen Ukrainian FPV drones skim in low toward a bridge that the convoy must cross, appearing in the air like a sudden rash of moving dots that force gunners to react. The Pantsir S-2 answers the way it was built to answer, its 30mm cannons ripping the sky and shredding multiple drones in seconds. And for the crew, it looks like an easy win. But the drones are not there to destroy the system. They are there to congest it. While the air defense crew tracks, fires, and reassesses, 3 drones slip through the chaos and hit where the convoy cannot ignore it. One tears into the lead vehicle's front tire, another damages the rear truck's engine housing, and the third forces a stop that creates the one thing a protected convoy cannot afford in a narrow corridor: dead space. The road compresses instantly, vehicles stacking forward and backward with no room to bypass, and the escorts are forced into a static posture. Radios light up, engines idle, and the security plan shifts from movement to containment because a stalled convoy is a target even if nothing is burning. Above it all, Ghost keeps flying, still under threat, still holding the release that cannot come too soon or too late. From the outside, it looks like 2 separate events: a fighter being tracked high over Donetsk and a convoy problem at a bridge. In reality, they are the same event, synchronized to create a single moment where Russian defenses are busy, blinded, or simply pointed the wrong way. The question is whether that moment will be long enough for Ghost to drop 4 hammer bombs into the only window that matters, or whether the Pantsir S-2 will finish the job first. January 9, 6:44 a.m. The stalled convoy remains locked in place beneath the bridge, its formation broken but not destroyed. Russian crews move quickly to reassert control, dismounting to assess damage, repositioning escorts, and calling for confirmation that the route ahead is still viable. What they do not yet see is that every second spent stationary sharpens the geometry against them. Above the corridor, Ghost adjusts course slightly, bleeding speed without signaling retreat. The Pantsir S-2 continues to track him, its radar now juggling competing inputs as operators attempt to decide whether the MiG-29 represents an immediate strike threat or a decoy drawing attention away from the ground fight. This hesitation is not an error. It is the pressure point Ukrainian planners designed the sequence to create. On the ground, additional Ukrainian drones appear, fewer in number and more deliberate in movement. They do not rush the air defense system again. Instead, they hover at the edges of engagement range, forcing gunners to keep sensors active and weapons hot, while commanders argue over priorities. Every radar sweep and cannon burst is energy spent in the wrong direction. Inside the convoy, recovery efforts begin to fail. The damaged lead vehicle cannot move without external assistance, and the rear truck's engine refuses to restart. With traffic stacked tightly between them, towing is impossible. The escorts spread outward to establish a defensive perimeter, but the narrow terrain leaves blind angles they cannot fully cover, especially against threats coming from above. At 6:48 a.m., Ghost receives the confirmation he has been waiting for. The convoy has not resumed movement, and the Pantsir S2 remains committed to air defense posture rather than repositioning closer to the ground column. The release window is opening, but it is still fragile. A single missile launch from the system would force an evasive maneuver and abort the strike entirely. Ghost holds steady, flying a line that looks predictable enough to invite confidence from the crew tracking him. In reality, the aircraft is already aligned for weapon release, its navigation system feeding constant corrections to the hammer bombs slung beneath the wings. These weapons are not designed for dramatic dives or last-second improvisation. They demand patience, precision, and trust in the sequence built on the ground. Below, Russian commanders make a critical decision. Believing the drone threat to be contained and the MiG-29 to be posturing rather than committing, they delay redeployment of the Pantsir S2 toward the convoy. It is a reasonable call based on what they can see. It is also the decision that closes the trap. By 6:51 a.m., the sky and the road are locked into a single moment. The convoy is stationary, the air defense system is distracted, and Ghost is approaching the final point where hesitation turns into failure. What happens next will determine whether this operation ends as another close call or as a strike Russian planners will not be able to explain away. January 9, 6:52 a.m. The moment tightens. Ghost is now inside the narrow envelope where every variable finally aligns. Altitude, speed, distance, and timing compressed into a margin measured in seconds. The Pantsir S2 still holds radar lock, but its operators have settled into a rhythm, tracking rather than firing, convinced they are containing the situation rather than standing inside it. In the cockpit, warning tones remain steady, not spiking, not dropping. That consistency is deceptive. A sudden launch would be obvious, violent, and decisive. What makes this phase dangerous is the absence of escalation, the quiet assumption on both sides that the other will blink first. Ghost does not blink. He keeps his flight path clean and readable, resisting every instinct to maneuver early. Below him, the convoy is frozen in an unnatural stillness. Engines idle, crews shelter behind vehicles and along the embankment. The escorts are spread thin, watching the tree line, the bridge, the sky, each element demanding attention but none offering clarity. The geometry has turned against them. What was designed as a protected corridor has become a confined bowl. At 6:54 a.m., Ukrainian drones reappear, not as a swarm but as punctuation. One slips into view just long enough to draw fire from a vehicle-mounted gun, then vanishes. Another pops up over the bridge railing, forcing a crew to duck and reorient. These are not attacks meant to destroy, they are reminders. The convoy is still under pressure, and that pressure keeps commanders focused on the immediate instead of the overhead. Inside the Pantsir S2, the workload increases. Radar contacts fluctuate as drones flicker in and out of detection range. Operators debate whether to switch engagement modes, whether the MiG-29 is still the primary threat or merely a feint. Switching now would mean resetting parameters, risking a temporary loss of track. Holding steady feels safer. It is the wrong choice, but at this altitude and speed, it feels rational. Ghost reaches the calculated release point and does not act. This is the most counterintuitive part of the sequence. The hammer bombs demand a precise window, but releasing at the first acceptable second risks falling into expected behavior. Ukrainian planners built slack into the model. Not much, but enough to allow a delayed drop that looks like hesitation rather than commitment. At 6:56 a.m., the Pantsir S2 rotates slightly, its radar cone shifting as operators attempt to reconcile overlapping inputs. That adjustment creates a brief degradation in tracking quality, not enough to lose lock entirely, but enough to reduce confidence. It is the opening Ghost needs. He releases all 4 hammer bombs in rapid sequence. There is no dramatic roll or dive, no visible cue from the ground. The MiG-29 continues on its line for a fraction of a second, then banks away as the weapons separate cleanly and begin their autonomous flight. The Pantsir S-2 reacts immediately, launching missiles toward Ghost's departing vector. The timing is close enough that debris from the missile's proximity detonation rattles the MiG's frame as Ghost pulls hard and drops altitude. The system has finally fired, but it is firing at the wrong phase of the operation. The hammer bombs are already committed. Their guidance packages ingest terrain data, adjusting their glide paths to remain low and unpredictable. Unlike ballistic drops, they do not announce themselves with steep trajectories or obvious signatures. They slide forward through the airspace the Pantsir S-2 has deprioritized in its last-second attempt to chase the fighter. On the ground, there is a delay that feels impossible to the crews waiting below. Nothing happens, no immediate blast, no warning. Then, the first impact hits near the bridge approach, detonating among tightly packed vehicles. The second follows seconds later, tearing into the center of the stalled column. The explosions are not random. They are sequenced to maximize compression, shock, and secondary damage. Fuel ignites. Vehicles flip or collapse into each other. Shockwaves echo under the bridge, amplifying the force and disorienting anyone still standing. The escorts attempt to respond, but the formation no longer exists. The corridor has become a pileup of wreckage, smoke, and fire. The 3rd and 4th hammer bombs land deeper into the column, targeting support vehicles and command elements. Radios go silent or fill with overlapping calls. Any remaining air defense units near the convoy are now forced to choose between engaging unseen threats or helping crews escape burning equipment. Above it all, Ghost is already withdrawing, descending into lower altitude terrain where radar coverage, fragments, and pursuit becomes riskier. The Pantsir S-2 remains operational, but its purpose in this engagement is over. It protected the sky too long and the road not long enough. By 6:59 a.m., the operation has crossed the point of no reversal. The convoy is no longer a moving asset. It is a loss that must be explained, not recovered. Ukrainian planners do not celebrate this moment. They record it, measure it, and prepare for what comes next, because the strike is not the end of the sequence. It is the trigger. January 9. Shortly after 7 a.m., smoke continues to billow from the wreckage beneath the bridge, thick enough to obscure the road entirely. What remains of the convoy is no longer organized by vehicles or units, but by pockets of survival. Crews move instinctively, dragging the wounded away from burning fuel, cutting through twisted metal, and trying to establish any form of command amid the noise and confusion. Russian recovery protocols begin to activate, but they are immediately constrained by reality. The corridor is blocked in both directions, debris piled too high and fires too intense for rapid clearance. Heavy equipment is requested, but reaching the site requires passing through the same geometry that just proved vulnerable. Commanders hesitate, weighing the risk of sending additional assets into an area that may still be under observation. Above the strike zone, Ukrainian drones remain present but restrained. They do not press the attack. Their role now is surveillance, confirming damage, mapping secondary fires, and watching for signs of rapid reinforcement. Every image transmitted back reinforces the same conclusion. The convoy is not temporarily disrupted. It has been structurally neutralized. At the Pantsir S-2 position, crews reassess what just happened. The system remains intact, its operators shaken but functional. Internally, the realization sets in that they were drawn into a vertical dilemma, forced to choose between defending airspace and protecting a ground asset that could not move. The system did what it was designed to do. The environment made that design insufficient. Ghost is already clear of immediate danger, flying low and masked by terrain. His aircraft shows signs of stress, but no critical damage. There is no radio celebration, no exchange of dramatic confirmation. The mission parameters are simple. Exit cleanly, preserve the aircraft, and prepare for the next phase of the conflict that this strike will inevitably accelerate. On the ground, Russian units begin to establish a perimeter around the wreckage, not to resume movement but to prevent further loss. The convoy's contents, fuel, equipment, and vehicles represent more than monetary value. They represent planning time, logistics, confidence, and the assumption that certain routes remain viable. That assumption is now broken. By mid-morning, command channels are filled with analysis requests rather than orders. How was the convoy detected? Why did air defense remain fixed? Which systems failed to communicate? And at what point did the decision space collapse? None of these questions have immediate answers, and the lack of clarity compounds the damage done by the strike itself. Ukrainian planners monitor the response carefully. The absence of immediate retaliation in the air or along nearby routes is as telling as the explosions themselves. It suggests caution, uncertainty, and a temporary pause as Russian commanders recalibrate. This pause is not accidental. It is one of the intended outcomes of the operation. The strike was never meant to eliminate every vehicle or kill every crew member. Its purpose was to fracture predictability, to demonstrate that even heavily protected movements can be shaped, delayed, and dismantled through timing rather than overwhelming force. The combination of drones, manned aircraft, and adapted munitions achieved that effect without requiring sustained engagement. As the smoke thins and the fires burn down, the site becomes evidence rather than a battlefield. Satellite passes capture the aftermath. Signals intelligence logs the sudden drop in convoy-related communications. Routes once marked as secure are flagged for reassessment. Logistics planners on both sides begin rewriting assumptions they held only hours earlier. By the end of the morning, the physical damage is static, but the strategic impact continues to expand. The loss of the convoy forces redistribution of resources, rerouting of future movements, and increased strain on air defense units now expected to cover both sky and ground simultaneously. This redistribution creates gaps elsewhere, gaps Ukrainian intelligence teams are already studying. What began as a controlled release over a narrow corridor has now rippled outward, altering decision-making far beyond the bridge where it started. The operation's success is not measured only by destroyed equipment, but by the hesitation it injects into every similar movement that follows. For Russian planners, the question is no longer how much was lost, but how many future convoys will move slower, with more fear and less certainty than before. And for Ukrainian planners, the operation closes with one clear signal: the trap worked. Not because it was hidden, but because it was understood too late. By late morning on January 9th, the wreckage beneath the bridge has cooled, but the operation is still unfolding in planning rooms far from the smoke. What remains on the road is no longer a convoy. It is a reference point, a fixed reminder that protected movement, even when layered with escorts and air defense, can be broken by timing rather than mass. Russian commanders adjust immediately, not by announcing changes, but by slowing everything down. Routes are revised. Movements are delayed. Air defense units are split between competing priorities, forced to cover both aircraft and low-altitude threats with finite attention. Every future convoy now carries the memory of this one, and that memory alters behavior in ways no explosion ever could. For Ukraine, the strike reinforces a strategic direction already taking shape. Precision, coordination, and restraint prove more valuable than saturation. The operation shows how adapted munitions, modest drone numbers, and a single manned aircraft can generate disproportionate effects when sequenced correctly. It is not escalation for its own sake, it is leverage. There is no public tally of losses and no immediate claim of victory. Those metrics matter less than the shift in decision-making that follows. Logistics confidence erodes quietly. Commanders second-guess routes that once felt routine. Air defense crews hesitate longer, aware that the next threat may not look like the last one. The bridge near Donetsk fades from headlines, but it does not fade from planning models. It becomes a case study, circulated internally, dissected for what it reveals about modern warfare's dependence on timing and perception. The lesson is not about a specific weapon or platform. It is about how small, deliberate actions can force much larger systems to react poorly. If you want to understand how this kind of operation is built, why it matters beyond a single strike, and what it signals about the next phase of the conflict, stay with us. What happened here is not an isolated event. It is a pattern forming in real time.